no case is a slam dunk. People could lose, or people could win a lot.
So, what's ahead for P. Diddy and the multiple civil lawsuits he now faces?
I do think if someone wants their day in court, they are entitled to it, and they will ultimately get it. But it does make things more complicated for Diddy as opposed to a plaintiff.
Diddy's team has already motioned to dismiss part of one civil lawsuit. But what's up the defense's sleeves in terms of the other three cases?
So I would be spending 100% of my time right now trying to go back in time, get any witnesses you can, go through the allegations line by line, see what's true, see what's false, see what's in between, so you could get your evidence together and make your case.
Let's get the basics out of the way right now. 54-year-old Sean Combs does not face any criminal charges. You know him by a list of different names, including P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, Puffy, or Puff. He's been a fixture in the entertainment community since the 90s, making his name as a rapper, record label exec, and entrepreneur. It was only recently that Diddy began making headlines in a negative way, after the feds raided two of his homes late last month. In the months leading up to the raids, people were talking about Diddy too, after several civil lawsuits were filed against him. In November of last year, 4 women filed civil suits against Diddy under the New York Survivors Act. It meant that any sexual assault survivor could come forward with civil litigation against their alleged predator, even if the statute of limitations had expired. So that's what Cassandra Ventura did. You know her as the singer Cassie, who worked alongside Diddy for years and dated him for almost a decade. In her lawsuit, Cassie alleges Diddy raped her, beat her, forced her to have sex with prostitutes, and recorded it. Cassie's lawsuit was settled just one day after it was filed. We don't know the details of that settlement, but do know Cassie has since begun cooperating with the feds. But there's still a total of 4 civil suits against Diddy. So to understand the suits better and to learn more about Diddy's potential strategy, I spoke to New York-based attorney Alan Sash.
They're very serious allegations, and I feel that they should be taken seriously. And at the same time, these are allegations from 1991, so it's 33 years ago, and that's a long time. And Diddy should be entitled to defend himself and to put up whatever evidence he has.
1991 is an important year in the Diddy timeline because that's when Joy Dickerson Neal says Diddy raped her. Joy filed suit last November, saying she met Diddy when she was a student at Syracuse University back in the 90s. Joy says she went out on a date with Diddy and that ended in her rape. She also alleges she's a victim of revenge porn because Diddy apparently recorded the rape. Just this month, Diddy finally responded to the lawsuit, asking for specific portions to be dismissed. Let's go back to Alan to explain this one.
To clarify, he's only asking for part of the lawsuit to be dismissed because there are 5 or 6 claims in that lawsuit. 2 of them, right now, everyone agrees could go forward just on the law. But what Diddy is saying is a few of them should be thrown out pursuant to the law because at the time that the statutes were created was after the events took place.
Does that argument hold water then? Could Joy Dickerson Neal's team say, hey, well, these laws were implemented for a reason, even if it was after this date, 1991, or is Diddy's team right?
So, in my opinion, I think Diddy's team is going to win this one because the event allegedly happened in 1991. And the 3 of the laws at issue were passed well into the 2000s. So what Diddy is saying, you can't charge me civilly with a law that wasn't even created yet. And I think that carries a lot of weight because laws are generally applied prospectively. If a legislature passes a law today, it's effective today. Going forward, you can't go back and say, oh, I got you for something 20 years ago for something passed today. There are exceptions to that, but the legislature has to specifically say it's an exception, or it has to be implied within the law. So I think Diddy's team here is on good legal footing, saying you can't sue me for something for back in 1991 when the law you sued me under wasn't passed until 2007.
Alan says there are a few reasons why Diddy's team may have responded to the lawsuit now. This civil suit was filed back in November, as I said, and now we're all the way at the end of April, heading toward May. So it's about 6 months since this suit was filed. Why would it take so long for Diddy and his team to respond to it?
So the wheels of justice turn slowly, number one. Number two, a lot of times baked into civil cases are just inherent delays. Even though you may not see it on the outside, a lot of times lawyers on opposite sides grant each other extensions, show each other professional courtesies, people are on vacation. So that could be a reason for it. Also, these motions take time to prepare. So one of Diddy's arguments is that since his companies are being sued, he's saying the companies you're suing weren't even created back in 1991. One was created back in 1992, and another was created in 2004. So you can't sue my companies for doing something when they weren't even around at the time you allege they did something.
So we know how Diddy's team is reacting to Joy Dickerson Neal's suit. But what about the other suits filed under the New York Survivors Act? There are 2 others who allege wrongdoing against Diddy in New York. That is Liza Gardner, and then in 2003 is a woman identifying herself only as Jane Doe. I'm wondering what sort of trajectory we could see for either of those lawsuits. Is it something that Diddy would like to settle or hopefully motion to dismiss as well?
It's a good question. I think that prior to these lawsuits being filed, something we didn't see, I'm fairly certain that there were overtures to try to settle it before, particularly the Jane Doe filing, because if you don't want to file with your name, chances are you probably want to resolve it before anything goes public. For whatever reason, a settlement was not reached in those cases. The lawsuits were filed. It's going to go forward. Again, it will move slowly because these cases, like a lot of civil cases, move slowly. Unlike a criminal case, in a civil case, you don't have a right to a speedy trial. It's just about money at the end of the day. So they go slow, and there's a lot of discovery where each side exchange information, documents, appear for depositions, and even appear for what's called an independent medical examination, which really isn't independent at all, but it's where the defendant sends the plaintiff to a doctor, their own doctor, to examine her mentally, physically, whatever the allegations may be, so they could get proof, their own medical proof, to try to prove their case or disprove the plaintiff's case.
Let's take a closer look at the allegations in the suits out of New York. Liza Gardner says she also met Diddy in the early 90s and was raped by him and another man after a party. Liza's lawsuit also says that days after this alleged rape, Diddy came to the place where she was staying and became, quote, irate that he choked her to the point that she lost consciousness. Then there's Jane Doe, who says Diddy raped her back in 2003. She's chosen not to disclose her name, but has provided pictures of herself at Diddy's recording studio. Jane Doe says she met one of Diddy's friends when she was only 17 and flew with the friend on a private jet to New York. There, she says Diddy raped her before sending her back on the plane home. As of now, we haven't heard a response from Diddy on either Jane Doe or Liza Gardner's cases. So why would Diddy have settled with Cassie so quickly and ignored the other civil cases?
Well, it could be an economic decision. It could also be an emotional decision. I wouldn't read too much into it because if you have a lot of fires going on, it's nice to put out as many as you can. But he hopefully has the financial wherewithal to deal with all of these lawsuits, and putting out one of them, if the price is right, then it made sense for him to do that.
And according to suits from at least 2 of the plaintiffs, Joy Dickerson Neal and Liza Gardner, settlement isn't an option. Several of the plaintiffs have said, we will not settle. We are demanding a jury trial. So does that make things even more difficult? Honestly, just logistically, because Diddy is facing multiple lawsuits and potentially down the pipeline criminal charges.
It makes things infinitely more difficult for a variety of reasons. One, it makes things more expensive because if you know you're in it for the long haul and you're going for a trial and you can't settle it, well, then trials are expensive and someone's going to have to pay for that. Also, if you're found responsible for a trial, that may come up in a criminal case down the line. So there's a lot of reasons why one may want to settle a civil lawsuit in Diddy's circumstances. However, we don't know how he feels. Maybe he feels the same exact way and saying, I don't want to settle it. I want a trial as well. We don't know because I didn't hear that one way or the other. But I do think if someone wants their day in court, they are entitled to it and they will ultimately get it. But it does make things more complicated for Diddy as opposed to a plaintiff.
Then there's the case of Rodney Jones, mostly known as the producer Lil Rod. While the bulk of Diddy's civil cases were filed in November 2023 with allegations dating as far back as 1990, Lil Rod's suit was filed in February of this year, laying out allegations between 2022 and 2024. Lil Rod's lengthy lawsuit features a laundry list of accusations against Diddy, including that Diddy groomed him, sexually assaulted him, drugged him, forced him to have sex with prostitutes, and recorded hundreds of hours of illegal activity. I'm wondering about this case as well. Is this something that Diddy should be settling or he should be motioning to dismiss? What would you recommend?
That's a hard question. A lot of it depends on Diddy's situation, the individual facts of each case, and the strength of the claims in each case, and whether or not he could defend himself. Claims more recent, there's going to be proof and evidence. So if someone's adamant that they are not guilty and they did nothing wrong, well, presumably there'd be documents, witnesses, texts where you could vindicate yourself. Unlike being accused of something that happened 30 years ago, chances are the evidence is going to be slim and it's going to be one person's word against another person's word. And it's difficult for both sides in that situation. So, something that happened long ago, you may be more inclined to settle rather than contemporaneous issues, you may be more inclined to fight. But when you have criminal charges looming over you, it's probably best to try to settle everything if you can, because if you have a lot of money, you could perhaps settle cases and make them go away, which seems a lot better than jail time.
And in Lil Rod's case, we spoke about it previously, that he alleges there's hundreds of hours of video and audio recordings. So there's potentially proof, at least what he says, of Diddy's wrongdoing. But could these audio or video recordings also be Diddy's saving grace, showing that he wasn't participating or there's only legal activity on these recordings?
I always say that audiovisual evidence will either be your best friend or your worst enemy. And I can't tell you what they say or what's on them, but I'm sure both sides have their fingers crossed that it helps them.
This is a Law&Crime legal alert. Google Incognito tracked users' browsing data without their knowledge. Mass Tort Alliance, one of our legal sponsors, is helping users file for compensation due to Google misleading the privacy of their incognito browser. If you've used Google Incognito anytime since 2016, you can start your claim in less than 10 questions at incognitoclaims.com/LCnews. Throughout all this, there's Diddy's defense team hard at work. What sort of strategies are they implementing? What do you think that they're discussing in hopes of winning this in Diddy's favor?
So there are a few things they would do. Number one, get facts. Number two, get facts. Number three, get facts. The law is in the books, right? That ain't changing. That's staying the way it is. The facts are what is absolutely crucial. So I would be spending 100% of my time right now trying to go back in time, get any witnesses you can, go through the allegations line by line, see what's true, see what's false, see what's in between, so you could get your evidence together and make your case.
Meantime, there's still the possibility of criminal charges looming over Diddy's head. So if that does happen, let's say that Diddy is charged criminally, could that put a halt on the civil proceedings?
It could, but probably not at this time because the civil proceedings are underway and it seems like they're moving ahead. Sometimes what happens is that a criminal defendant will ask to stay or to halt any civil cases against them pending a criminal case. And the reason why is in a criminal case, you have a right not to incriminate yourself and you have a right to stay silent and leave it to the government to prove their case against you beyond a reasonable doubt. In a civil case, the standard is much lower and you're going to be forced to testify. And you don't want the government in the criminal case using your testimony from the civil case against you. So you ask the criminal court, do me a favor, stay the civil cases so I can preserve my rights in my criminal case. And a lot of times the criminal court will say, yes, I will grant that request to make it fair for you. However, if that criminal case doesn't come down until a year from now, the civil case will already be a year underway, which may be another reason why the criminal case may be slow going, wanting to see what happens with some of the civil cases first.
What is your prediction for the future? Do you think that charges or an indictment are coming for Diddy?
Well, let's start with the premise that this is guesswork, because the only people who really know are investigators and prosecutors. But there's a lot of smoke out there, and there may be enough smoke to create probable cause. And when there's probable cause, there's generally criminal charges.
As far as the civil side of things, what do you expect? Do you think that things will be settled or they will go to court? What sort of time frame are we looking at?
In terms of time frame, years. And I could safely predict 2-3 years. I think that's fair to say. In terms of where it goes, well, like you said, if somebody does not want to settle, they do not have to. However, I think that may change because a civil court can only give you money. That's it. No one's going to jail in a civil court. So if your ultimate remedy is money, if you could get money 3 years from now, or you could get the same amount of money a year from now, who wouldn't take it a year from now? Now, some people may want a jury verdict and that vindication. And then it's really not about the money anymore. They really want the verdict, and that's what's important to them. And again, they have a right to that. But there's a lot of pressure along the way from the court and from the attorneys to try to resolve it. Because at some point, people will make an economic decision to whether it's worth pursuing it. And no case is a slam dunk. People could lose, or people could win a lot. So it may make sense for everyone to resolve it and move on. But again, it's the choice of the litigants. No one could force them.
In the case of Joy Dickerson Neal's suit, Allen says there's a better frame of reference in regards to a timeline, or at least a coming date of importance.
As of now, Diddy's motion to dismiss several of the charges is going to be what's called returnable. All the papers get filed with the court on June 12th. The plaintiff's opposition to that motion is due on June 5th. And Diddy's reply to her opposition is due June 11th. And then on the 12th, it all gets submitted to the court. But like we said before, a lot of times lawyers cooperate with each other. And if the plaintiff needs an extension or Diddy needs an extension, they'll probably work together. They both have very experienced attorneys on the case, both the plaintiff and the defendant.
There's also an upcoming deadline in Lil Rod's case. As we reported last week, Lil Rod's team filed a summons requiring a response from Diddy's team. I spoke with former prosecutor Melba Pearson to explain.
So when someone files a lawsuit, right, you go to court, you work with your attorney, you file a lawsuit around whatever issue, right? The party that's being you, the party this person that's suing is the plaintiff. The person that you are suing is the defendant. The defendant has to respond to your lawsuit within a certain amount of time. That response basically is going to talk about, well, either A, I'm admitting everything that you're saying in your lawsuit. So, okay, never mind. We'll just figure out a settlement. B, I'm denying everything that's in your lawsuit. So, judge, we need a trial date because this isn't going to be resolved. C, I'm admitting to part and I'm denying part. So, again, the question will be we're going to be looking at a limited amount of things. Or you could have a situation where the defense says, you know what, I want to file a motion to dismiss because everything that's here is just complete nonsense, for instance, right? But you have to file something. You cannot ignore when a lawsuit has been filed against you. And it appears in this case that is what Diddy and his team did. They have not filed a response, and they have 21 days from the date that the lawsuit has been filed to respond. They have not done so. So if they refuse to respond at all, then that means Little Rod wins, and that's the end of the case. So basically what the judge says is, you know what, since you have chosen not to respond, we're going to take that as an admission. And whatever amount of money and whatever relief or remedy that Little Rod is seeking, we're just going to give it to him. So that's why it's going to be very critical in the next few days to see what Diddy's team is going to file. Are they going to file an answer saying that they admit that Little Rod worked for him and maybe engaged in a few things? Are they going to come up with some kind of affirmative defense? So in other words, we did this, but we did this for a really good reason. So for instance, we were videotaping, but we believed that other members of the bad boy family were engaged in human trafficking. And we had cameras around just to be able to capture that information, right? I'm throwing that out there as a hypothetical. They're probably not going to say something like that, but that could be, in theory, a response to, I did this, but I did it for a really good reason. Therefore, judge, do not give this person relief. I was right to do what I did. So that's sort of what we're looking at here in this case at this point in time.
I asked Alan about this too. So now there's the summons and a deadline hanging over Diddy's head in the Lil Rod case. What do you expect coming from his team in regards to Lil Rod's civil suit?
A lawyer for Diddy will reach out to Lil Rod's lawyer and basically say, I need some time to answer this complaint, or perhaps make a motion to dismiss the complaint. Can you give me some time? Lil Rod's lawyer will probably say yes, and something will happen. Either a motion will be made to dismiss all or part of it, or an answer will be submitted, and then we're off to civil litigation once again.
Overall, there are some pretty startling accusations against Diddy. As far as the allegations that are laid out in these civil suits, is that something that surprises you, the things that Diddy is accused of doing?
Unfortunately, no, and it has nothing to do with Diddy. We've seen men behaving badly for a long time, and we see it every day. And we see it now every day for things that happened decades ago. So it's not surprising, and that's sad. In fact, I just heard something the other day that there was a question whether a woman would rather be left alone with a man in the woods or a bear. And a super majority of the women said bear. And to me, that's a really sad commentary on how men have been behaving. And I hope that changes because I would hope we're better than bears.
We haven't heard much from Diddy's team in the way of statements, with a few exceptions. In regards to the federal raids, they released a statement calling it a, quote, gross overuse of military-level force, saying there is no excuse for the excessive show of force and hostility exhibited by authorities or the way his children and employees were treated. In response to Lil Rod's lawsuit, Diddy's team says in part, quote, His reckless name-dropping about events that are pure fiction and simply did not happen is nothing more than a transparent attempt to garner headlines. We have overwhelming, indisputable proof that his claims are complete lies. All we've heard from Diddy himself is in this statement, posted to his social media back in 2023, quote, "Enough is enough. For the last couple of weeks, I have sat silently and watched people try to assassinate my character, destroy my reputation and my legacy. Sickening allegations have been made against me by individuals looking for a quick payday. Let me be absolutely clear. I did not do any of the awful things being alleged. I will fight for my name, my family, and for the truth." And while some experts expect a federal indictment, that's still up in the air. One thing we know for sure, there's a lot of civil litigation ahead.
There will be a lot to talk about as the case unfolds. As the evidence comes in, there will be more court filings, there will be evidentiary hearings, so stay tuned.
Based on the recent filings in both Joy Dickerson Neal and Lil Rod's lawsuits, we can expect to see some major movement ahead from Diddy's team. It's still unclear what or when, but as soon as we know more, we'll bring you the latest. Reporting for Law&Crime, I'm Gillespie.